time management, that's always going to be a number one pillar. Profitability, right? James Joseph, who I think you know James as well. He's a matrimonial attorney out of Long Island, but you should get him on. He's excellent on the show. But him and I joke around, when I know James since we both opened our law firms, and it was right around the same time. And we were sitting in his office one day before lunch, and I said, how do you prioritize your day? Right? Because it's all about where you prioritize your time, your focus, and your resources as a CEO of a firm. I said, how do you prioritize your days? Like, well, I open the calendar, I look at the client meetings, blah, 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 blah. And I said, give me a piece of paper. Give me a piece of paper. I drew a dollar sign on the top. And I said, that's how I prioritize my day. And it's never changed. If I show you my planner right now, I have 3 things on it. I'm looking off to the side. The first one is a dollar sign.
Welcome to the Founding Partner Podcast. Join your host, Jonathan Hawkins, as we explore the fascinating stories of successful law firm founders. We'll uncover their beginnings, triumph over challenges, and practice growth. Whether you aspire to launch your own firm, have an entrepreneurial spirit, or are just curious about the legal business, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
All right. Welcome to the Founding Partner Podcast. I'm Jonathan Hawkins, your host, and I'm really excited about our guest today. We've got Tom Tona, who I think I originally met on LinkedIn, and then we happened to be at the same conference. And luckily, we were able to get to dinner. That was a really fun dinner. We had a couple other folks with us, and man, I was cracking up the whole night. But, that it goes to show sort of the power of LinkedIn. If we hadn't connected there, if I hadn't been on there, if you hadn't been on there, we would not have had that dinner and we would not be here right now. But Tom, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me on, John. I really appreciate it. We became fast friends from LinkedIn. Tom Tona, have a firm out in Long Island, two verticals, personal injury and no-fault collection provider, healthcare recovery. And our tagline is always, we fight for the injured and we fight for the healthcare providers that treat the injured. And we've been doing that since 2001. So I'm glad to be here, man.
So tell us about your firm. How big is it? How many attorneys? How many staff? How many offices?
Sure. So right now we have one main office, one satellite. We're probably going to open another 3 satellites by December 31. I'm hoping to have 4 satellites total throughout downstate. The main office is in Islip. We have 25 people in Islip. We have 15 set up in the Philippines. We've been outsourcing certain pieces of operational stuff that law firms can outsource since before it was in vogue. I've been doing it for probably over 10 years. We started with India. We transitioned to the Philippines. And we have people right now spread out throughout the country as well, remote.
Well, I know you've got a big operation, and I know you want to grow it bigger, and that's what I like about you. You're ambitious, and you're always trying something new. We're going to dig into all of that because I want to hear about what you've done and what you're doing. So
Sure.
Let's go back to the beginning. So your firm started in 2001. What were you doing before that?
Okay, so very beginning, I'll make it real quick because it's not all that sexy, but I thought I wanted to do real estate. I always loved the idea of investing. Right. As a kid, I think you and I were joking about it the past week where I've been selling things since like grade school. Right. I would get something like a promotional item for free. I'd go to school. I'd sell it. It might be for 50 cents. It might be for $1, but I was a born sales guy. I graduated law school, got my license in 94. So I've been doing this almost 30 years. And I thought I wanted to do real estate. I went to a sole practitioner. Guy was paying me nothing. When I say nothing, I mean 20 grand. I was getting the guy's dry cleaning. He would make me go get his lunch. He would make me go get his wife gifts. But why it was a gift was I got to do the lawyering because he wasn't all that good as a lawyer. Quite honestly, I did lawyering as a first year and I was winning cases for him. I would go to court. He had no idea what he was doing. So he was doing a little bit of foreclosure. He was doing foreclosure defense. He was doing some transactional stuff. Lo and behold, I did not want to do real estate. Not that way anyway. As an investor, yeah, all day long. The minute I make a buck, I try to lock it up so I can't spend it, right? And I do. That's my investing model is to never spend money that I could lock up in something that could make me a lot more money. So I left that job after a year with a friend of mine who was renting space in there named Herb Auger, who you've heard me talk about. I think, oh, actually, you went to dinner with us, me,
He
you,
was
and
at
Herb.
dinner. Yeah, he
He
was
was
at
at
dinner
dinner.
with us.
Herb was renting space as a newly opened PI attorney with just him and a laptop. But we would go to lunch every day, and I'd see this guy, and I'd go, "What the hell, man?" He settles a case for 30 grand. He leaves. He was done for the day, right? But it was just him and a laptop. But we were out to lunch, and he's like, "Listen, man, you're cut out for PI. Find a job doing personal injury." Literally a month later, back in the day, we didn't have job websites. We put our resume at the bar association, and the lawyers were eating lunch there. They flipped through a book. I'm a freaking dinosaur. You're laughing. That's the way it worked. How old
I
are you,
like
John?
it.
How old are you?
I just turned 48.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you know you ain't that far behind. We were
Yeah.
working with what, carbon paper? Remember carbon
Oh,
paper in
yeah.
law firms? Okay. There's half of our audience could be like, what the hell is carbon paper? But anyway, so I get a call from a PI firm. There was no negotiations. They were like, we're going to pay you 40 grand. You want to do PI? Take it or leave it. That was my interview. And I was like, can we negotiate? And the guy was like, no. And I was like, okay, I'll take it because I wanted to learn PI. A week in, I get a file on my desk. I'm like, what's this? They're like, you're on trial next week. I'm like, oh, okay. Sure enough, I try the case. I had no idea what I was doing, but I found what I wanted to do. Right. So I spent from when I first started with them for about 5 years, I tried anything they would give me. And I didn't care about prep. I didn't care about, like, I prepared, but I didn't care that they gave it to me last minute. I didn't care if I was supposed to lose. Every time I won, it just reinforced that I was meant to do what I was doing. So I was doing depositions, I was doing trials. My direct report was a old school trial guy. And he said, look, I always brought in a lot of cases, and I started making a lot of money very quickly because I was a rainmaker, right? And I still am. So he pulls me aside one day. He goes, look, I know you're kind of the rebel in the firm. And he knows, I know you got about 40 PI cases right now that are very close to either trial or settlement. I'm going back to a civil service job. I got 2 years left to vest a full pension, and then I'm retired, right? So, and I know that you only want to work under me. Like, you don't jive with, the divorce guy or the general practice guy. So he said, go out on your own. Take your files, cut us back a piece on everything, which I thought was ultimately very fair. Pay us the disbursements on the back end. And so I was like, wait, I just got fired, right? But in a nice way. I went home, and at the time I was a drinker. I don't drink now, but this was back in 2001. I drank about a half bottle of scotch. And the next day, Tona Law was born, right? Now I don't drink anymore. So I first want to say that. But that kind of started the firm. And I started the same way everybody else did. I had a laptop, subletting from a law firm, and I just built it from there. I just invested in myself and the firm and built it from there.
It's funny. I mean, you're a born entrepreneur, obviously. So maybe it was inevitable that you were going to do it, but you sort of needed that push. The good thing is you had 40, 50 files to start. So that was good, right?
Right. And I wasn't an idiot. I had these things all teed up. I was always working. Any files I had, mine, the firm, it was all one thing. I move files, right? Like, you get them ready for trial day one, you get top dollar at settlement, or you try the case. And I'm a big believer, like, the plaintiff mindset is files don't move themselves. You got to move these files. If you're waiting for the defense attorney to call you up, be like, oh, we're ready for depositions. Nah, you got to push every file that's open. So because I had those 40 files, he was like, look, man, you know what you're doing. Don't work for anybody else. Take your files. And then within like 2 weeks, I settled my first case for like 300 grand. I cut them back a third of the legal fee. I thought that was fair. And I was great. The rest was all history.
Good start.
Yeah.
So you had the files. Did you have staff, or was it just you when you went out?
It was me, but what I did was I kind of bootstrapped it, right? I found paralegals that wanted to work at night, make extra money. We worked out a deal, and I had paralegals that were paralegaling on files because intrinsically I knew my capacity was going to be stifled if I'm sitting here pumping out bills of particulars. So I always said to people when they go out on their own, hire quick, right? Like, don't wait till you build up the nest egg. Make the hire help you build up the nest egg, right? The leverage point has to start very quickly.
That's a huge issue that I see a lot. I know you do too. Attorneys are scared to hire. I don't have the money, but that's what's going to make you the more money. And I
Yeah.
get it. That's a balance. You got to get there. So you eventually hired. So how long did it take till you started really hiring and growing to where you are now? Sort of take us through that progression.
Sure. Sorry, I heard one of the beeps go off. I want to shut it. I don't know could you hear that on your end?
I,
Did
did,
you?
I didn't hear
Okay,
it.
then I'm not going to worry about it. How long it took me after that to make my other hires. So pretty quickly I saw, you know, marketing leads to scaling, right? And as lawyers, if you haven't heard the mantra, always be marketing, right? People come to me, they're like, look, man, I'm kind of in a jam. I'm like, market your stuff because marketing fixes everything, right? A lesson I learned much later, like last year, was marketing is almost always the answer. But before you throw more money at marketing, make sure your intake processes are tight. So I hired a killer intake person. My retainers doubled. So I'm like, man,
Nice.
I should have done this years ago. How much money did I lose because I was again afraid of a price tag, right? Fear kills dreams, man. Like, so for me, it's all a process. And I go, I'm not going to count the money I might have made. I'm going to count the money I'm going to make and where I'm going to invest it in, resource allocate.
You brought up a good point. A lot of lawyers are thinking about opening the front door to bring in new stuff, but they forget to close the back door and it's just flowing out the back. They don't even realize it. So that's really important. So, all right. So you've grown your firm. You were really lucky to be able to try all these cases as a young lawyer. People don't get that kind
I
of
agree.
experience nowadays. So you're really lucky there. I assume you don't try any cases anymore. What's your role in the firm nowadays?
So I am the CEO. I will get my hands dirty if I have to because I love the scrap. So it doesn't matter to me. I've done everything in the firm, right? I was the street sweeper. I was the toilet paper replacer at given times. I was never too proud to get my hands dirty. So I made a choice about 15 years ago that I was either going to be a trial legend or I was going to be a pure entrepreneur, owner of a law firm, and hire really great people. It's been a process because I didn't realize the difference in lawyering between people who do litigation but have never tried a case, right? Not being in the end zone on a case, there are skill gaps that people don't realize are there unless they've been in that zone. So the way I prep a file is different from, the ongoing debate I see on Facebook groups that we belong to, Mastermind Experience or a couple of these other ones where people want to own the business of a law firm. You want to talk about scaling, but you don't have the foundational stuff built as a business owner. You don't just scale. Don't talk about scaling until you've built the foundation rock solid. There are foundational pillars to building a law firm. And don't go into certain areas of law just for the money, right? If you're going to be a PI lawyer, you got to build the war machine to try the cases. Don't be, and I take cases from law firms a lot where they're trying to settle a case that's a policy tender case of 100 or 250 or 300, and a law firm in Queens is trying to settle it for 7,500 bucks. That's not doing right by the client. Like, so you have to check your motivation for why you do this stuff, right? And for
Mm-hmm.
me, it's about the clients.
So you mentioned the foundational pillars. I think that's important. Can you expound on that? I mean, everybody talks about growth. They want to scale their firm. Sometimes they get a little too far out in front of their skis. At least for your firm and your practice, what do you consider some of those foundational pillars?
Sure. Time management, that's always going to be a number one pillar. Profitability, right? James Joseph, who I think you know James as well, he's a matrimonial attorney out of Long Island, but you should get him on. He's excellent on the show. But him and I joke around, when I know James since we both opened our law firms and it was right around the same time. And we were sitting in his office one day before lunch. And I said, how do you prioritize your day? Right? Because it's all about where you prioritize your time your focus and your resources as a CEO of a firm. I said, how do you prioritize your days? Like, well, I open the calendar, I look at the client meetings, blah, 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 blah. And I said, give me a piece of paper. Give me a piece of paper. I drew a dollar sign on the top. And I said, that's how I prioritize my day. And it's never changed. If I show you my planner right now, I have 3 things on it. I'm looking off to the side. The first one is a dollar sign. The next one is the third pillar, which is human resources. And the fourth one is marketing, right? And then no matter how big you grow, it's just those same core basics at a different scale, right? The right people in the right seat, HR, human resources, right? I now call that culture. As the CEO. My job is making sure that my culture scales with my business. I don't want a business that makes a lot of money but turns toxic, right?
Yeah. I want to
So,
dig into the culture part in a minute here.
yeah, I think you want. But again, so like I was born for that stuff because I love marketing. I hated, I'm going to be honest, I hated human resources. But Patrick Wilson was like, you just never learned it. He was brilliant in that observation. Law school doesn't teach you any of this stuff. And your people are the business. So you can't say you hate it. You got to hand select the people you want on that bullet train to success with you. You got to make sure they're all in the same alignment in the vision, the values, all that stuff. So I learned to really love the pain points. And because I don't have the give up gene or the fear gene, I just always pressed ahead.
So a lot of people know who you are. If they don't, then they need to go check out your podcast. It's what's it, Lead Counsel?
Lead counsel. Yep.
Great podcast. And you do some interviews, but you also sort of lay out your playbook, I would say, sort of how
Yes.
you do it in your firm. And, there have been some really good episodes you've put out. We've talked about it, but
Yeah.
like the employee onboarding system, I think you've got like 6 or 7 parts to that, different episodes. I think that's really good stuff, number one. And number two, is really good that you're putting it out there for other people to learn. I was taking notes. I handed it to somebody in my office. I said, we got to do some of this stuff. This stuff is
Oh,
great.
that's awesome. That's awesome.
So
Thank
yeah,
you. Thank you
anybody
for
out,
that. Thank you.
anybody out there that hadn't checked out your podcast, they need to, and keep putting that out there. I think that's really important. And I think one of your podcasts, maybe you were talking about the stress, we'll call it, of growth. And you said you knew something was wrong because you started getting stressed again. And that's when you knew you needed to add somebody. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So again, Patrick Wilson, Atticus, back in the day, it was great for the fundamentals, right? They used to say all the time, your practice talks to you, your business talks to you. And I actually morphed that into something completely different, which I'll tell you in a second. But I remember my first Friday I took off. Now, you're talking to a guy, I work 7 days a week, man, and I lived for that. I loved it. I work 7 days a week. But now I'm newly married. I go to the mall with my wife. The first call comes in at 11 o'clock. Something's broke, meaning like there's a fire in the office. And my mindset switched. I was like, oh, my practice is talking to me right now. That frustration is my practice talking to me. And I started to look at those problems, those issues as my guideposts, right? So then I started to take off more time. And I would say, listen, man, don't call me. Record the fire. And if it's actually really fire, call the fire department. But there ain't shit I could do if I'm in Europe. Sorry, I don't know if I can curse. You'll have to bleep it out. But
Go for it.
all right. There ain't anything I can do if I'm in Europe anyway. Call the fire department, call the insurance company. And I'm blessed because I have a great second in command. My integrator, Janira Aleszczak, who I don't care who hears it because she's never going anywhere. We've made a blood pact basically of we're in this to the end together. But she has been instrumental. And I would say that, people looking to get value out of this stuff is one of the most important hires you'll ever make as a CEO is that integrator second in command. So whether you do an EOS, it's an integrator, whether it's a chief operations officer, it's got to be somebody that you basically 2 people, 1 brain, and they're executing on your vision, right? So I was blessed because that's Janira, right? She's a fighter. She is scrappy. She's got the same disc as me. So listen.
So how did you find her? Everybody wants that, but how do you find it?
I'll tell you. in the bathroom. I swear to you. So at the time, I was renting one small office. It was maybe 1,000 square feet. I carved off a section. I had my person. You walked in the door, and that person was my paralegal, my reception area. She was all bundled into one. No formal training. I stuck her in there because I knew nothing about hiring. And she comes into my office one day, and I'll never forget. It was dark out. It was like 4:30. It was a winter. She said, "There's this girl in the office, in an office down the hall, but she was in the restroom. She was crying. But she's a paralegal there. You keep telling me we need somebody else." I was like, "Bring her in. We'll hire her." She literally wipes her tears off, comes in from the bathroom. I do a quick 20-minute interview. I knew nothing about real HR at that point, and I hired her. And the rest is history. Like, the kid grew up with me. She's, 20 years younger than me, 15 years younger than me. But when I tell you, dude, that's the secret sauce. How far you will go with your law firm is largely dependent on who your second in command is.
Wow. I've heard that from others. And, I think you got lucky there for sure, as you know.
100%, 100%, which is why I will never let her leave.
Yeah. So back to a couple things. You mentioned going away. I always tell people, when you go on vacation, that's when everything's going to break.
Yep.
Well, two things happen. Everything's going to break, and that's when every client in the world starts calling in. That's when it's like, if you ever want to go rainmake, go on vacation.
Right.
But so you had mentioned in one of your podcasts that I think at some point you had, I don't know, a certain number of employees reporting to you, and that's when you knew, you're like, there's too much going on here. I need somebody else to create another layer. Right. What was the number, and how did you figure that out? I mean, you said it was talking to you, but how did you really get to that?
Yeah. So again, the business talks to me, right? I always treat the business like a living, breathing thing. And I'm like, why am I so stressed? Why am I so stressed? And I feel like we had 8 or 9 people, and I was part of Atticus at the time. And I start listening to what would be considered a podcast now. They had this audio file of an interview of when you need an office manager. And sure enough, they're like, when you get to 7 reports, you got too many reports after that. 7 people, too many. Doesn't matter if they're VAs, doesn't matter if they're in person. You cannot manage communications. It's too complex past 7 people. So I did what every other law firm owner does who knows nothing about this stuff. I said, Janira, you want to be my office manager? Because she's done everything in the office. Now, again, I was blessed and I was lucky, right? Because I didn't even realize. I never looked at her resume. So she actually had a Bachelor of Arts in law firm administration. I was like, oh, I didn't even know that, right? So I promote her to office manager. And now no one's reporting to me. I already start that whole paradigm of, look, I don't need to know what's going on. Like, I got to let go of the vine, other than the legal ethics in the file and the legal competencies in the file, which, again, I was still doing all the legal work at the time. So the number 7 comes from the U.S. military, I believe. All the studies that have been done after that determination of, you cannot have more than 7 direct reports and function and communicate in an efficient way. And I found that to be very true. So now if I have a manager who's handling 10 people, I actually did this recently, my no-fault silo. My no-fault manager is an unbelievable manager. I was like, you got 15 VAs. Do you have a VA that you love? I call them ITMs, international team members. Other people call them virtual assistants. I call them international team members because they're part of the team for us. I said, how many ITMs do you have in the Philippines? 15. You got anybody over there you love who's really competent? Yes. Train him to manage the international team members. Give him a team of 7. We're going to take you. Eventually, we're going to get you out of managing all of that, right? So that 7 number, it's pretty accurate. The stress level decreases because complexity of communication becomes so much as you add past that. And it's like a ridiculous multiplier of stress and inefficiency.
At the law firm GC, our team of experienced attorneys provides knowledgeable legal counsel for businesses of all sizes. Founded by Jonathan Hawkins, our firm specializes in corporate law, real estate, litigation, and more. To learn how we can become your trusted legal advisors, visit www.yourlawfirmgc.com and schedule a free consultation today. The Law Firm GC. Law done right.
So here's another level. So you're the CEO now, and maybe, you get in there a little bit every now and then, but the transition from doing the legal work to doing both the legal work and the business to then becoming the CEO. I mean, I know personally it is stressful. I mean, you're dealing with internal business stuff, and then you're dealing with judges and having to go to court and all that. How did you manage that? And how did you get out of sort of the day-to-day legal? And how long did it take you?
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I've been in that CEO role right now probably the last 7 to 10 years, right? Because once I started hiring associates, it started with reading the book E-Myth, the E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. At the same time, literally fortuitously, I was out to lunch with James Joseph. He said, dude, you got to take Atticus, man. They're preaching your song right now. You got to check it out. So I went to a weekend seminar at Atticus and boom, I hired him on the spot. So pure CEO, roughly 10 years, had a little glitch last year, had to jump into certain part of the file handling again, realizing that was not going to be for long. That was not going to be for long because I had to check what I wanted to be when I grew up last year, right? One, I had the vision of a trial firm for personal injury, largely driven from crystallizing it through EOS. And I'm going to give a shout out to Ryan McKean, who really inspired me to figure out gut check time. What kind of personal injury firm do I want to own? I came from trial work. My EOS State of the Union that we did on last Friday was we're back to trial firm. And it's been paying off already. It's been working and it's getting the clients what they need, right? We have 4 trials pegged for trial by the end of March. Good.
It's amazing how that happens, right? Having a clear vision.
Clear vision, man, was everything. So, and I will say, like, that was knowing Ryan, speaking with Ryan and hearing his story about Mikey Cruz and what he did on that trial and having that gut check himself. Look, who are we as a law firm? And you can make a comfortable living if you've tried cases and you set up systems to settle them. But that's not the same as delivering what should be delivered if it's not the right number. And as any person that owns a trial firm or trial lawyer will tell you, if you're settling every case, you're not getting the top dollar for those clients, right? So just continuing down that trajectory, that was the epiphany. That was the epiphany I had for what I wanted to do. But I also knew it wasn't going to be me. So that's where I had to get real about, okay, the lawyers that are going to be in here, I need some of them that want to try cases and be on trial, right? And now I'm hiring that very shortly.
It gives you the clarity so you know what you need to go find.
Correct.
So, okay, so here's a question for you. First, I'll tell you what I think I know about you, and then it'll lead to a question. So,
okay,
you're an entrepreneur, you're a business guy, you're a big dreamer, you're a risk taker, but you got a family, and you don't want to risk it all. So as you continue to grow your firm, how do you approach sort of the balancing of the risk with investing in the growth? What's your approach to that?
All right, that's an awesome question. So I have a couple of ground rules, not too many, when it comes to risk versus the balancing act. One, I was talking to somebody, I forget who it was yesterday, and they were like, look, you got to get liquidity, line of credit against your home equity. And I was like, never, ever. My one rule, and I don't have a lot of rules when it comes to my approach to business, but my one rule is nobody touches my home, right? No one gets a lien. No one gets no. My business now is at a level where I don't really even have to do that. But yeah, I still have to personally guarantee everything. But no one's going to touch my home where my wife and my daughter sleep at night, right? And if they ask for that's just a deal. That's just off the table. I'm very creative on the financial side. I can, and I'm aggressive on the financial side. And I have the wherewithal from the firm at this point, the cannon fodder financially where, banks only want to deal with you when you don't need them. So when you don't need them, that's the time to lay the foundational stuff that you know you will need for your plans, right? So I never put my family at risk. So doing a balancing act between risk, I can just tell you that I don't really have to do a balancing act because I don't have that fear reflex, right? I don't take stupid chances. I don't say, oh, I crossed this number. I want to be 20x that, and I'm going to put the bank on that bet. Do I make aggressive bets? Yes. My wife, who's the accounting manager in the firm, Janira, and my other team leader, Carissa, I run everything by them to get their sign off and buy in. That does not mean like we really stretched far last year, last quarter, with risk versus reward in the vision I had and the infrastructure build out that I had invested. And it was hard for them because they don't have the same thing as me. I still had to push the envelope. So I basically said, do you trust me? Do you believe in me? And what's the worst situation outcome? Can we manage it? And they all said yes, with trepidation and a little bit of fear. More so Janira and my wife, because we created it was just a tremendous amount of stress for them to bear with me on the plan. Me, I was kind of in my sweet spot. I'll be honest with you. Like when you turn up that flame as high as it goes, I was walking around like everything was good, man. I was like, all right, man, this is where I belong. I'm that general in the war. And so I don't know if there's a real balance, right? When you start playing with six-figure investments in your firm, in yourself, that you could take home, right? You're married, right, John?
Yep.
Married? Okay.
Yeah.
Your wife, I assume, knows what goes on financially in your firm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you choose to allocate $250,000 to a vision bet you're making, she doesn't see that money come home. You could be damn sure she could be like, what the hell are you thinking? Right? And you got to say, do you want to live like no one else lives in 6 to 12 months? Or do you want to live safe and secure? Because you can't have it both ways. You got to be willing to say, this is a $400,000 investment. I've always made us nothing but money. You got to trust me. And what's the worst that happens? You've seen me do this a bajillion times. You don't think I can drag us from the ashes again? If there's an issue where I'm not seeing something. Now, though, to answer your question, balancing risk, I also bounced that decision off of my fractional CFO. I also bounced that decision off my accountant. And I check those decisions because as you scale, it's higher stakes all the time.
That's
It's
right.
higher stakes.
And you want to make bets, but you don't want them to be where they kill everything.
Right.
So incremental bet. So
Correct.
I came across something some years ago, an investment guy, and his philosophy about how to make a big bet. And so he says, look, you need a house that's fully paid for. So it doesn't matter where it is. It could be anywhere in the world, but it needs to be fully paid for. So you can go live there if you lose everything. And you need at least one stream of income that you can sort of rely on. Then you build a pile of assets or money that you can go make the big bets with.
Right.
And then I think probably part of that is you don't bet it all on black. You're gonna spread it out.
Listen, I'm not stupid with money, right? So to answer your question about balancing risk, I built those revenue streams within my law firm, right? I'll never forget where I stand. My wife tells me she's pregnant. I'm standing in the kitchen of a rental. We were renting at the time 15 years ago. And like a white heat warms through my body. Like, oh my God, PI is good, but there's months where PI sucks. And then my other vertical was born. That other vertical is that other stream of income. Institutional collections for healthcare providers with legal fees backed by insurance companies, paid by the insurance companies. I always get paid. I always get paid with regularity, and I get paid on a 30-day turn on anything we win. Now I just got to go out and do marketing, which I was born to do. I also built another vertical within the space of working with a mass tort firm out of Manhattan that I do marketing. I send cases. They work the cases for me, with me, So those two verticals are those cash lines that financial guy's talking about. So I can be more aggressive on the one silo that I know needs it, which is the trial side personal injury. Right. So, yeah, that's good advice. I also don't believe in big swings. I'll be honest with you. I believe in incremental wins. Right. So, yes, I took a very large investment, but when you put it in perspective of what the business produces year after year, it's not all that scary. It's really not, because I'm not stupid with money. And then, the other philosophy is, and I don't know how your financial guy would feel about it, but I tend to, any money I do take as a profit distribution, or that is the cream on the law firm, which is the profit side. If I ever take anything, a lot of it gets reinvested back in firm, but the stuff I do take, I lock that up so it can't be accessed. Meaning, put it into real estate, put it into, a real estate investment with other friends that we've talked about, right? So it's never going to be touched even within the next 5 years. I'm a long tail player on the financial space. So my wife has a lot of comfort in that perspective. I frustrate her a lot of times because I don't like to spend money.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. So you mentioned something. So a couple of things. I'm a big believer in niche practice areas, and I like that you've got three, you call them verticals, and they serve different purposes and they pay out on different timelines. The PI, probably 9 to 12 months, maybe 18 months. The no fault collections, which I want to talk about next, sounds like that's monthly or pretty quick. And then the
Yes.
mass torts, I mean, hell, that could be a
5
decade.
years, 5 years. Yeah, 5 years.
Could be longer. But let's talk about no fault collection. I really never knew what that was until I was talking to you. So maybe explain that a little bit. What is it? And then we're going to dive a little deeper on that because you're doing some cool stuff there.
Sure. So when I had that white flash of fear about having a kid that I had to support, now a wife that I had to support, I studied my current business model. And I was like, okay, I don't know a lot about business at this time, but I understand I have a personal injury client who's an individual. So I said, okay, this is a B2C business. I then looked upstream and said, are there upsell opportunities or profitability layers that I'm not capitalizing on? And lo and behold, I go, well, I can represent one injured party, but I can represent like 30 healthcare providers that touch that injured party. And I could represent healthcare providers that do the same type of law that I knew, which was the no fault collection stuff, where other law firms have the individual, but I've got all the upstream. And I started with one chiropractor who had 10 files. Now we just crossed like 300 institutional clients, and we're doing 16,000 files this year.
Damn.
Right.
That's a lot of files.
So I think people don't realize, like, you look at your current business model, like your specialization is law firm succession planning, right? Well, you've got a captive audience. You got to look upstream. They come to me for this, but what else is there? It's funny because before I got on the call with you, I was talking to Jeff Cunningham, who you know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Jeff is my ethics guy on retainer. I said to him, he goes, what do you got going on? We check in, I check in with him once a month because I'm very aggressive on marketing and on operation. And I always want my ethics guy signing off on it. And what I love about Jeff is he's not your typical ethics guy. Every other ethics turn is like, no, that's a standard answer. You pay a lot of money for it. Jeff is like, let's examine the how, the why. I said, I have started succession planning and, I'm just working with the CFO now on it. He said, oh, you're going to work with John, right? I said, of course I'm going to work with John. He's got a New York guy. That's his wheelhouse. John's getting my call when it comes to the paperwork to deliver everything we finish as far as succession planning with a partnership track, right? I think that to be an A-level firm, you got to deliver beyond pay, beyond bonuses, opportunity for ownership. We can't do this forever. I take guys out to lunch all the time that are in their early 40s and they're like, the old guys at the table, they won't let us try the cases and we're never going to be equity till they drop dead. They're all going to be gone before that happens, right? So real talent wants opportunity, and I've built something sellable. Why would I not want to benefit everybody with that, right?
The other thing I've seen a lot of, I'm sure you have too, it's the old guys, we'll call it, they hang on too long. And then the aggressive second generation that really could take over get fed up and leave. So then there's this gulf between the old guys and the young. And then that gulf just gets farther and farther and bigger. And then at some point, the old guys, it's hard to recruit because the people look in there and they say this is a dead end, and
Right.
then it's inevitable. It's just going to fall in on itself, and
Yeah.
so it's smart that you're starting this, because if you people that wait too late, then it's too late. You can never come back from it.
Yeah. And you see it better than anybody, man. Like what's insane to me is, and I gotta say, it's probably greed. It's gotta be greed that they don't want to let go of the big paydays they are getting. But it's the only sector I know of. Every other business person I know builds to sell, builds to exit. And it's the only sector I know where guys die at their desk. I
Mm-hmm.
don't understand how archaic that thinking is. Like, I built something of value, and each vertical is sectionable off, right? Oh, you want to just do PI? You don't want the other stuff? No problem. We'll value PI. It's got a value. We can work on that, right? Or you look at the whole thing as a business whole. Listen, if the hedge fund money gets freed up to own law firms, I'm perfectly positioned for that. I'll be calling you much sooner rather than later.
Well, okay. We're going to dive back to the no fault. I know
Go
you,
ahead. Go ahead.
you you created some sort of internal proprietary software or something
Yes.
to help handle that, correct?
Yes.
So tell me, what gave you the idea to do that? Was it just necessity? And then how long did that take? And how does that work?
So, in terms of growth and scaling, it typically comes down to technology and people, right? You got to have the right people and you have to have the capacity, right? So, I was doing it with upwards of about 50 no fault clients at the time because my marketing, I'm like a savage. I go out there, I sign up all these clients. And then I had paralegals and I was still doing all the ARBs myself, but I scaled it really quick. And I realized, without realizing what scaling even was, I said, oh my God, I'm still on spreadsheets. My stress level is telling me this is insane. I go to the marketplace, and I always say, in addition to what my old coach used to say about your business always talking to you, the marketplace is always talking to you too. You have to create the bandwidth to step outside of the stress of the day to day to figure out the opportunities that lay before you. Okay. I remember where I was. I was watching The Sopranos one night. I used to go home when The Sopranos was on live, where, once every week they would release a new episode. I would open a bottle of red wine. I would have a pizza from one place, always the same routine. And I think it was on at 9 o'clock. But I had my laptop on my lap and I was like, I can't run this on spreadsheets anymore. I can't run this on spreadsheets anymore. Nobody wants, this is not even risk mitigating, right? You get the wrong person, deletes the spreadsheet, you're screwed, right? I was running them on an Excel spreadsheet. I start looking for software. I can't find software. Right there in that instance, I said, all right, I got to build it. I start calling around. I start talking to people that are in tech. And then I start fleshing out what I want. And then we started building it. But again, at that point, I had the capital from the law firm to build what I needed to run and scale the law firm, right? So I built a client portal that basically encompassed everything that I knew I needed to run the no-fault silo and give clients 24/7 access to millions and millions of dollars in receivables that they weren't even aware. They didn't know where they stood. So then it became a marketing tool once I went live with it. But the impetus behind it was I stayed with Chase Bank and I'm still with Chase. They're not great on the lending side. Anybody who owns a business will tell you they'll never lend you what you need until you don't need it. And then you need something else and they still won't lend it to you. And I love my banker at Chase, so that's no knock. I don't know that she listens to this or not, but it's no knock against her. But she knows, like on the lending side, they're not really. But their software, their technology was always and still is cutting edge. Cutting edge. That was the impetus. So I said, I want clients to see this like a bank portal you log into to see your receivables. And that was how I built it.
So you've been talking about, building a firm to sell. I tell lawyers, if you can, try to build assets. The assets are where the value is. And that is it. This software is an asset that could be sellable. And I know we've talked offline about it before. The other thing about it that I think, and you tell me, the no fault collection, it's a high volume practice. It's probably hard to manage, and it's hard to manage at scale. And by having this asset, you've now created a competitive advantage. You said it was a marketing tool, but it's also, I think, a competitive advantage to move the cases quickly. Another thing I'd like to talk about with business owners, I know other people talk about it too, is you create moats around your business. And in the law, it's kind of hard to do, but it sounds to me like you've done that with this software and the no fault collections. And really, it's just getting more clients, which you're good at, and just scaling the crap out of it. And then that is something, again, somebody just buy it. It's a revenue stream.
Yeah. So the no fault in and of itself is a revenue stream, right? And I'm talking about now, I've got like built in demand for this portal, and we're just going to be rolling out the white labeled version of it. White labeling, for anybody who doesn't know, is basically you slap your name on it. Now the Hawkins law firm has a Hawkins portal client base, right? A client portal, right? So we're talking about forming a new company around the portal, because when it was first built, it was built for the law firm. The law firm was paying to develop software it needed to run the practice. Now I see a different future down the road for the portal. Now I've got, over a dozen law firms in Florida that I know would be on it the day we white label it. I just hung up with somebody before this call, and they're like, oh, we could either build it and spend $500,000 to $1 million in 2 years and possibly get it right, or we could just pay you a licensing fee. So it's kind of taken on a shape of its own at this point, which again, I'm building a succession plan, but I don't know that I have the personality to not be on the golf course at 65 and not doing some kind of wheeling and dealing, right? So,
well, the other cool thing about the software, which it sounds like you're already doing, is you can spin that off into its own entity, even if you don't sell it to anybody else. It's
right.
it is a
Which I
asset.
plan on doing. I plan on doing that. Yeah.
And that, I know we've talked a lot about non-lawyer owners, but if it's in its own entity, that's not a law firm. You can pass that to your daughter. You can go raise money. You can do whatever you want with it, raise investors.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry about all those rules. And then you just license it back to your firm or whoever else.
Right. And to be honest, I've already done all that research, right? So software as a service, SaaS that you're talking about, they require $5 million in sales before they'll take you seriously, right? Because everybody thinks, hey, I have a patent. Well, if you don't take it to market, you don't get rich. You just spend $25,000 on patenting fees, but you could say you have a piece of paper that looks fancy. You got to monetize it, right? It's the same thing with software. This is not the .com bubble where they're like, Tona Law has a portal. Let's give Tom $50 million. And Tom in the south of France with my wife and my daughter on a boat, on a yacht. It's not like that, right? You got to show $5 million in sales for it to be a business, but I do have that opportunity. And yeah, I am going to spin it off. I'll give the law firm an unlimited license, right? The unlimited license is I built it for the law firm, and I don't want anybody looking at my no fault silo going, well, now we got to pay for this. We got to pay. You know what I mean? Like, look, that might change. I'm not the guy that would structure that deal, but I'll always be ultimately fair. But the white labeling opportunity too is, yeah, this is the moat, right? No one in New York has this. No one in the country has this. So, in New York, this kind of sells itself, right? And to talk about the no fault silo a little bit more, it's self-marketing. I don't do SEO. I don't have to do PPC on the no fault. Everybody knows us. We're a market dominant force in no fault collections because of the portal and because of the fact that we have systems that are so solid in how we process claims and cases. They can take it. Look, money in the bank. We have on our portal a win rate of 85% over almost 60,000 arbitration files. That's our historical data. So I'm not promising results. I'm saying I can't promise results, but historically, your success rates are going to be north of this if you do X, Y, and Z. Why do I know that? if you're an orthopedic surgeon, I work with a lot of orthos. They brag to their friends about how much money they make with our office. Their friends now want to work with us. So they call us. I can pull up every orthopedic client and say, oh, our success rates on orthopedics who follow our Tona Law systems and methodology for collections and file structuring is 95%. So if you have $100,000, you can bank on 95,000. Here's the way it's going to flow out over 30, 60, 90, 180 days. Oh, and we have an average, resolution time of 200 days. And they're like, wait a minute, if I give you $1 million, you're telling me I'm going to get 90 to 95% of that in under 200 days. I'm like, I can't promise it because we can't promise you results, but I can show you what the statistics show you. KPIs, the data that you hear everybody talk about.
That's sweet. That's sweet that you can just pull that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Shifting again. So number one, really cool on the no fault collection software that you developed. And for any attorneys out there, I encourage you, if you can figure something out like that within your practice, go for it. Although it takes time and it takes money, but go for it. But shifting, you talk a lot on LinkedIn and other places about coaching and masterminds. I know you're real active in that community, and I've been in it too. Not as long as you have, not as active as you have. And I know it's valuable, but talk to the folks out there that may be thinking about that or maybe have never thought about it. What's your view about it?
So it's funny that you just segued into that because I was going to say about the portal. I was part of a different group in Atticus. Their challenges were take off 175 days a year and innovate something new. I innovated the portal. That was the challenge, right? The time off is critical to give you the space and the bandwidth. So to answer your question specifically, I love when people call me up and they're like, what do I need? I'm like, you need a coach, right? Oh, okay, when I get the money. I'm like, that's like saying you're going to wait to join an exercise class until you're skinny. You join an exercise class to get skinny. You hire a coach as early as you can afford to do that. You attend masterminds, right? A nominal investment, $4,000 a year gets you in the door at John Fisher's mastermind. I have been to every single one for the last, I don't know how many years. I'm missing my first one in April because I'm going to the EOS Worldwide Conference in San Diego with Janira, my integrator, and that's a week-long conference. Otherwise, I'd be at the John Fisher thing with Craig Goldenfarb's back-to-back. So the advice for anybody is get a coach. Oh, you want to wait till you get more money? Okay, get a coach anyway, right? $4,000. If you can't find $4,000 somewhere in your practice, you got bigger issues. Even if that's your last $4,000 and you don't have to pay it all, it's $1,000 a quarter. No commitment, no contract.
And that's important. I think there are different levels of coaches. You could spend probably $50,000 a year on all this stuff, or maybe stuff that's cheaper than $4,000. But you're right. There's no long-term commitment. Go for it. I mean, there are lower levels that you can get to that will just pull you up faster.
Last night, I saw on LinkedIn, there were these two trial guys who've been bemoaning the cost of coaching, which I don't necessarily agree with, by the way. I think that one of the secrets that I heard somebody talk about, but I'll repeat it here, is you have to pay to play in the world of business success, meaning you don't get access to rooms without supporting the people in those rooms. Okay, so John Fisher's mastermind, that guy's not making a fortune on this stuff. He loses money probably every mastermind, but he's brilliant because he gets med mal referrals throughout the country. So if you're in the room, don't seek to just take, right? But pay to play, man. Pay the fee. Don't ask for a scholarship for $1,000. Buy the guy's book. He gives them to you for free. Go on and buy the guy's book anyway, right? You got to show support for the groups that just give. So going back to that, there's a guy who started a mastermind on LinkedIn and he's only charging $23 a month. A month. And I'm like, listen, I don't know how they're going to do that. I don't know if it's going to succeed. I'll probably be one of the guys that join because I am a junkie for this stuff. But $23 a month is the cost of one deli sandwich in Manhattan now.
Yeah.
Right. So like the guys or ladies that call me up and they're like, what do I need to do? I think I need to hire a managing attorney. I'm like, do you have an office manager? right? And the guy's like, no, but I need a trial attorney for, listen to me. What you need to do is your first hire should be a coach to help you figure out what you need, right? You coming to me, A, I don't do that stuff for free anymore. I don't have the time. And B, at the level I'm at, I got to charge you more money than some of the coaches I can refer you to. I'm not going to take money from people if there's a better cost effective option, right? So hire a coach, and listen, go through the stuff that we put out for free on LinkedIn. There's a lot of value there, one, but two, I've talked about how to find the right coach. I've got LinkedIn posts that are literally the 3,000 word max that give you the interview script on how to hire a coach. Just print it up, hire a coach, right?
I'm with you.
People,
I'm
yeah.
with you.
And I had a buddy who I don't talk to anymore. He had some issues, but the guy would tie me up with questions and I'd spend time answering those questions and he would ignore everything. And I turned him an asshole. I'm like, you're an asshole. You waste my time. You make me give you valuable advice that other people pay for, and then you ignore it anyway. So I should charge you because then you might value it differently. But I stopped kind of dialoguing with him because I was like, I can't take this anymore. Like it was just a chronic thing where I was like, you're not listening anyway.
And that's a good point. If you pay for it, you're more invested and you are more likely to actually do something instead
You
of
value it,
nothing.
right?
Yeah,
You
exactly.
value it. I was trying to be a good friend.
So shifting again, I know we're getting towards the end here, but you
Whatever you
said
want.
you're an animal in marketing. I know it. I've seen it. I've heard you talk about it. A lot of lawyers are scared to market. They're scared. They don't want to be salesy. They're scared about this. You're not afraid to ask for business, and I like that. So
No.
what kind of advice would you give to the people out there that maybe are starting their firms, are trying to get the clients, but they just don't know what to do?
So it's kind of a complex question you're asking, right? Because one, I think it starts with knowing yourself. At the foundation of anything that's going to work, you have to know yourself, right? If you're a born salesperson, then you'll sell. You're not worried about rejection. If you're not confident in your skill set, that comes across. I can smell that a mile away. And so can anybody who's pretty savvy, right? So it's a complex question because different people like different things. So, like, there are introverts that like to read, but don't like talking to people. Start a book club, right? Because the whole thing about marketing at the grassroots level, and marketing can be broken down in two things. If you don't have a lot of money, you're going to invest a lot of time. If you don't have a lot of time, you can invest a lot of money. And some of us do both, right? Some of us do both, time and money. I love marketing, so I never want to take myself out of marketing. I just hired a fractional CMO because I can't run the silo and the vendors anymore. It's making me crazy. And I don't have the time. I have to pay for that, right? So the advice I would have is, in the beginning, typically money's tight. You got to eat every day anyway. You will never meet somebody who does more meals with more people than me. Sometimes I'll have a cup of coffee with somebody in the morning or breakfast and lunch in the afternoon. I want to have dinners at home. That's kind of my line. I want to be with my kid and my wife. Knowing yourself, and it's a skill. You can hire people to teach you the skill, but don't expect people to teach it to you for free. And don't expect them to do the lifting for you. You got to put in the time and the effort to learn how to sell. If you're not going to learn that, you're going to have a problem in your own practice. You might as well seek out a really good job where somebody respects you, can put you on a track. But if you don't want to sell and you don't think you have a business and you are in sales, you're wrong.
And you got to practice. You're gonna sort of suck at it if you've never done it. You're gonna suck at it at first. You just gotta do it and fall on your face and just keep doing it.
You can't be afraid of rejection, man. It's just built in. And there's great books out there, right? Like Grant Cardone's book, Closer's Guide to Survival, Win Friends and Influence People. Best marketing book out there. People miss the point of it. Marketing's not about you. Marketing is about the person you're talking to. Their pain points are your opportunities. When I go out to lunch with somebody, I'm like, how's business? And then I shut up, which I don't shut up a lot. But I shut up because if I ask somebody how's business or how's life, what do people love to do? They love to complain. In those complaints is born business. That's how my no-fault silo got started. I was trying to hit doctors up for PI. That benefits me. That benefits the client. That does nothing for the doctors. Once I stopped doing that and I would go out, have lunch and say, hey, doc, what's your biggest pain point? Boom. Marketplace opportunity was born.
That's gold right there, Tom. That's gold. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great advice. All right. Shifting again. I know you're into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. How'd you
Yeah.
get into that? How long you been doing that? Tell us about that.
All right. So I'll take you way back. A lot of this stuff ties together. I was really bullied as a kid. I'm 5'7", weighed 125 pounds when I graduated high school, and I had the mouth on me that I have now. So I got beat up a lot. I got bullied mercilessly. And that ties into I got into martial arts because of it, because I never wanted to feel fear. And feeling fear when you're about to be bullied, I went to kind of a tough high school. And so when you feel fear like that, it's horrible, horrible. And I feel for people that are bullied. It's like my least favorite thing that triggers me from 0 to 1,000. If I see somebody bullying in my office, or I see somebody talking escalatingly rough in my office, I'm the guy that leaves the desk and goes and talks to them. So I got into martial arts back in high school. Again, I was drinking. I shouldn't have been in high school. And I got in a fight with a wrestler. And I was that feeling of drowning again. I was in deep water with this guy. He had me pinned. He weighed 50 pounds more than me, and he just beat me mercilessly. I missed a year of school because of that beating. I had torn ligaments in my knee, but I never forgot it. So I took other martial arts, and when did I see my first UFC? Back in the 90s, it had to be. But I never forgot that feeling of not being able to defend myself again. And so I said, I got to take Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I got to learn the ground fight. I was a lawyer. I'm 55. I was 38 years old. And at the time, people were like, are you nuts? Like, you're not getting in a fight. I go, you never know. You never know, right? I never wanted to feel out of control. I go into a school. I know I'm already old for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I interviewed like 5 different schools, and then I found my instructor now, and he was 125 pounds, and he held me down. I couldn't get up. And I was like, here's my tuition. I'm good. Let's go. It was also, I always embraced the suck, right? Like, I want to do hard things that I shouldn't do to see what the results will be on the back end. And dude, I've had more surgeries than you can count, more beatings, more bloody noses. But it killed my ego at a time I needed my ego to be killed because I thought I could do no wrong. And I got more from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu than pretty much almost anything else in my life. And I got into it, and the benefits have spilled over business-wise, representation for my clients-wise. You name it, it's been nothing but a positive experience. Anybody listening to this, you're never too old to start. And I would say that there is nothing that will change who you are like doing jiu-jitsu. It humbles people that need to be humbled, and it gives you self-confidence to the people that don't have it. And so it is for everybody. You got to find the right school. But yeah, it's been an amazing journey. And now I'm down to like once a week because I got fake hips and time is pressed. But like this Saturday, I'm training with a buddy of mine who beats me up for about 2 hours. And we round out each other's edges. Another black belt. I got my black belt in jiu-jitsu 3-4 years ago.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. The other thing, it teaches you to take a beating, get back up, all that kind of stuff, toughness. But the other thing is the mastery element, which, applies throughout life. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
I know we're going here. So
don't worry about me time-wise,
okay.
man. I carved out time. I love talking to you. So
Sweet.
Don't worry about me. We could always cut it down to an hour later.
All right. So a couple things. Building a firm, it's not easy. It's not easy. It's fun. I like it, but it's a lot of challenges. What kind of habits did you develop to be able to do what you've done and what you want to do?
Okay. Great question. And so it kind of ties into the last question you asked, right? Which was, talking about jujitsu. There's so many parallels in all areas of life, right? What do I mean by that? I just said earlier, there are 4 core principles that if you revert back to those 4, I don't care if you're just crossing 6 figures, 7 figures, multiple 7 figures, or 8 figures. Those 4 principles of law firm building and management time management, profitability, HR, and marketing, they don't change, right? It's the same thing in jiu-jitsu. So what I've always tried to do is embrace one of my core habits is seek to simplify where things are complex, right? There's always a simple analysis that can be applied to the most complex problem. Sometimes it takes you a while to get there. Another habit, meditation. Oh, dude, if I could recommend one thing to anybody listening to this, if you're a lawyer, if you're a law firm owner, you want to make millions of dollars, take up meditation because your brain is this wondrous thing and it will solve issues. It will change from meditation. But if you don't give yourself that slack time with your eyes closed and train, your brain's going to train you. And your brain is a monkey mind. Your emotions are always going to get the best of you. And I can give you a list of names, my arm long, of people who are really talented that are on the roadside laying like litter, for lack of a better word, because they could not control their emotions, their brains, or their mindset. So like, self-care is a big thing for me when it comes to habits, right? I have a list of habits I do almost every day. Like this morning, I woke up at 4:30. I had my coffee. I meditate right after coffee. Every day, it's not negotiable. I then hit the gym in the basement. I will do the treadmill every day because I worry about cardiac health. I do 45 minutes, the minimum effective dose as recommended by studies that are done. I will then do the sauna for as long as I can take the heat. And then every other day I lift weights for strength training. One day a week I do jujitsu, and I try to limit my caloric intake because I know that's been shown for brain health, heart health, and all of that stuff. So I try to limit myself to one meal a day, one big meal a day. And then, if I get a little weak, I'll have like a protein shake or something like that. But these are habits that I build a little at a time, right? You're asking me like, what would I recommend for people? If you don't meditate, I say to people, download the Headspace app. It's free for 30 days. Okay, you download Headspace. Can you do 1 minute with noise canceling headphones on in the dark at 5 a.m? You can't do 1 minute? Then you don't got discipline, right? And what happens is you start to see the magic and go, oh, I could do 2. Oh, I do 20 minutes a day. Now I started doing twice a day. I do 20 minutes in the morning, 15, 20 minutes in the morning. And before I go to bed, I put the Apple Watch on and they have a breathing app and they have 5 minutes. I fall asleep every time like a baby. I used to have insomnia. I was a chronic, like non-sleeper. So habits are these little things that you do daily and cumulatively that you want to do because in the long run it'll have massive effect. By the way, I also do this stuff because when I look up how do most billionaires start their day, or multimillionaires start their day, meditation. I go, well, that's for me because that's where I want to be, right? So the habits that I'm doing are designed for self-care because if you don't take care of yourself, you're definitely not going to be able to build a law firm where you have to take care of other people and you're not going to be able to you can't take care of anybody effectively if you don't take care of yourself.
So true. I'm not currently meditating, but I have gone through long stretches, month-long stretches where I did it every day, every morning. Sort of had that routine too. And it definitely calmed me down. It takes a little while, but after a while, even my wife was like, you just seem different.
And I'll tell you too, because you're a monster, right? You want to scale. I know how hungry you are, dude. I hear it every podcast you do, everything you put out. You're born to do what you're going to do. At some point, to be the CEO that the company needs to scale, you got to be the lighthouse in the storm, right? So we had a highly stressful fourth quarter. Get on a leadership meeting. It's an hour and a half long. And I could see the look on everybody's face. I'm like, guys, take a deep breath, man. Because I had already been meditating. Because I fell off too. I fell off for like 6 months after doing it for years. And that's kind of the meditation journey, right? Get back on. Because for you to scale nationwide like you want to do, you got to be a different CEO. You got to be that guy that's unflappable in the terms of the stress that everybody else you're going to see it on their face. You go, listen, man, take a deep breath. This ain't as bad as it seems. We're good. And when you could do that, I had 3 people on that leadership meeting go, dude, thank you, man. You just calmed us down. I'm like, okay, now can you guys start meditating too? Because you guys need to be the leaders that everybody else needs to scale, right? So there is that ripple effect. And I would be like, look, they're not going to get the best of John Hawkins if you don't take care of that brain of yours that has this drive to be nationwide,
Mm-hmm.
right? So yeah, man, get back on it.
All right,
Get back
I'm
on it.
doing it.
Get
I'm
back on
committing
it.
now. I'm committing
Get
now.
back.
We'll check back.
Dude, you send me text messages. You show
Uh,
me you're doing it.
Yeah. Okay. So you touched on this a little bit. You've throughout this podcast. Now's the time to do it. So I want to know, what's your vision as of today for your firm? What's the vision for? I know you have 3 verticals, but
Yeah.
describe it however you want. What's the vision?
Okay. It's going to be a multi 8-figure law firm. I had originally, it's so funny the way things shape up, but you got to dream big. If your dreams don't scare you, not big enough, right? So I wake up January 2023 and I'm like, I want to build an 8-figure law firm. Like, that's a big metric. It's a hairy, audacious goal. That's what I'm going to do. I know what I need to do. I write out this big, long plan with my coaches. We go through all the pain points we know we're going to hit. So my big goal is to be multi-state MSO, multi-state operator with offices in major markets, multi 8-figure law firm, right? And I know we'll get there because when we set the original vision, it was a 3-year window, and we're probably going to hit it sooner than 3 years. That's the magic of like the EOS planning, along with the mindset, all the culmination of that stuff. So my big, hairy, audacious goal is to be like the next John Morgan and Morgan, with the culture that we have, right? I watched John do what he did, and I read his books. And a lot of it was you put it into being by the repetition of saying, hey, this is the vision, man. And I want to leave you with this. You do EOS? I think you do EOS.
I've read that book probably 3 times. I don't
Okay.
have a outside coach yet, but yes,
So
it's
I highly recommend, and I'm not the guy that's disciplined enough to implement it myself, so I hired somebody. But they always talk about it. I think it's from Jim Collins, Good to Great. Right person, right seat, on the bus in the same direction. And I was like, well, we're not really a bus. We're more like the bullet train that's out of Japan. Like, we move, and we are moving fast. And so when I did my EOS rollout last week, we had already been on it a year. And I was like, I want you all, I had 20 people in the room. They thought I was crazy probably. I said, I want you to repeat after me. The train has left the station. And what that means, and I got goosebumps as I said it, is this. My vision is so clear. I see that destination. Nothing's getting in that way. The bullet train has left the station. What that means is, hey, John, you come in tomorrow, and one of your key legal assistants is like, my husband's being relocated, moving to Florida. Okay, the train's left the station. What do we have to do to fill that seat, right? Or I had that happen to me. One of my key managers, like, my husband's relocating to Florida. I got to give you notice. I was like, we're sending you a computer. Everything in your desk will be when you get to Florida. You're my first remote employee. That was 5 years ago. She's my best man, one of my best managers. So I just repeat that mantra every day now. Like, it doesn't matter what happens in the micro. The train has left the station. And if you know your destination and the windshield is clear, that vision is clear, you're going where you want to go. The rest of it, it's not going to stop that train.
I love it. I love it. Although I think 8 figures may not be big enough, Tom. I think.
Well, multi, right? I said I want to get to like 50
still,
million, 100 million. Look, I'd love to build a 9-figure law
100 is
firm.
what? That's 9-figure, right? Yeah.
9 figures, yeah.
I'm
Look,
seeing 9 figures in your future.
God willing, and the creek don't rise, man. God willing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Well, this has been fun, man. I love talking to you. I love your energy. I love all the stuff you're putting out. For people that want to find you, tell us the best places. You mentioned, tell us your podcast, LinkedIn, everything.
Sure. The podcast is Lead Counsel, and the whole goal behind that is when we were coming up, we didn't have access to any of this stuff, any of these rooms, any of these conversations, right? Like, in order for you to talk to 8-figure lawyer, you had to fly to their office, and hopefully they would deign you with their presence. Now you can just tune in on a podcast and listen to it. So that podcast is having people on that are building these mega monster firms or own them already or on their way to it, right? And then LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn because I love the written word. I was a writer undergraduate. I thought I was going to be a famous author one day. Instead, I turned into a law firm business owner. So, yeah, I mean, those are the two places. Our law firm website is tonalaw.com. You can find us on there as well.
And your podcast, I'm going to plug it again. I really love it. I've shared that with so many people, so many lawyers. So keep doing it. And thanks for coming on. It's been
That's
fun.
awesome, man. Thank you. Thank you. And I appreciate you having me. This has been a lot of fun.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Founding Partner Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts to stay up to date on the latest episodes. You can also connect with Jonathan on LinkedIn and check out the show notes with links to resources mentioned throughout our discussion by visiting www.yourlawfirmgc.com. We'll see you next time for more origin stories and insights from successful law firm founders.